Oh, I think I figured it out. Okay, I think it's this one. There it is. All right. Ah, perfect. Okay, cool. That was way more trouble than it was worth, but that's okay. Right. So we're going to talk about manipulating workouts today. And what I like to talk about is the idea that, like I was sort of saying to Renee, you've always got to have a plan. Always got to have some kind of framework for your workout, but you're training a human being, right? Sometimes on Monday morning, they feel awesome and they're ready to crush it. They had a really restful weekend and they're all recovered. And then other times they're like back from a weekend wedding and they're exhausted and they're hungover. And so Monday morning is going to be terrible, right? Like, we're not training Olympic athletes. We're training people who like have lives. They're not going to make linear progression. So the whole idea with program design is that you want to have some kind of guideline around what it is that you're going to accomplish, but you're going to have to make changes. That's just the reality of what. If you don't make changes, then you're probably not delivering a very comfortable experience, and you're probably not going to keep that client over time, right? Like, they're just not going to enjoy it. And so they're not going to stay with you. So it's really important that when we work with someone, we can kind of work with the human being. That's kind of the gist of what we're talking about. Okay. So I figure out which one of you. There we go. Okay. So when we talked about acute variables, we were talking about sets and reps and load and rest. And that's kind of like the traditional viewpoint for manipulating workouts. If I have someone who's really exhausted, I might ask for less reps. I might give them a little bit less load. I might give them more rest, right? If they're feeling really good, I could add a set. I could add load. I could shorten the rest, right? So those are kind of like the really easy ways of manipulating workouts. And those adjustments are going to be based on kind of two things: predominantly the client, like how they move, how they feel, but also maybe based on environment and equipment. What if we wanted to do barbell front squats today, and there's like a big group of guys over at the squat rack, and they're going to be there all night because they came to lift together? You're not going to sit around and wait for the barbell to be available. You're going to pick something else so that you can get your client moving, right? So every now and again, we might make an adjustment for that reason as well. The second thing we're going to think about, and this is more kind of based on what the client shows us, is we might have to reverse engineer the program a little bit based on how the client moves. So if they demonstrate a faulty movement pattern, we're going to have to regress the movement. And we were doing a lot of this on Saturday for those of you that were in Nanaimo. We worked a lot on coaching, like the setup, the basic part of the exercise. And so, for example, if you have someone who's low back arches while they're doing an opposite arm and leg head hug, what could you regress the movement to make it easier so that they can perform it better? What do you think some of the options would be? You can either unmute yourself or type it, whatever you want.
Just having isometric hold rather than involving movement.
Yep. So if we had them doing sort of a reaching, and while they were doing this dynamic movement, back was arching, then you just say, hey, extend out, hold. And I want you to draw your belly button up, and I want you to keep your back leg lower down. Good. Turn your, like, when they're not moving, it's easier to fix their position, right? So isometric holds are awesome. So as if this is kind of relevant to you when you're working with your friend, if he's having a hard time doing the movement properly. Well,
Sorry, Logan, I'm not sure if it's an issue with my speaker or not, but I can't hear you. You keep cutting out. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm experiencing the same thing.
everybody's saying.
Oh, now I can't hear you very well.
Can't hear you at all.
Hmm.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. This new computer they tried to give me is old, and I'm gonna have to go back to using the one that I was using before. Anyways, whatever. You just can't see my face today. That's fine. Okay, so yeah, if you put them in an isometric hold, that allows you to coach up the movement. That tends to work out really well. When they're not moving, they can pay attention to the cues that you're giving them, right? So that's a great option. What else do I have in the chat here? Moving one body part, either the legs or the arms. Yes, another great option. So if they're having trouble coordinating the contralateral pattern, then we could just do one limb at a time. That would be another good one. And similarly, you're doing a good job of stepping it down. Similarly, we could actually just have them work on quadruped by itself. Arms and legs stay on the ground. Because again, one of the big problems with that low back arch is it's a loss of neutral. So we might have to go back to all 4 points of contact down on the ground and reestablish neutral, right? So granted, I go a little bit off script when we start talking about manipulating workouts. And this is sort of based on like, Josh and I had a conversation about this. We both train this way, and we watch a lot of our peers that we think do a good job of training do the same thing. Yeah, you can always manipulate sets and reps, and that's fine. How do you know when you should do less? Well, it's based on their movement performance. So if the first 8 reps look really good, and then the 9th one, they start to struggle a little bit, and then the 10th one kind of looks like, whoa, you might say, okay, like tuck your elbows in. And if they can't tuck their elbows in and it still looks like gross, then okay, good job, stop. Like there's no point carrying on to 15 reps if rep number 9 and 10 and maybe the start of 11 like all looked bad, right? So if you're going to change reps and sets and rest and volume and all that stuff, fine, it's based on movement performance. But then the thing that I think about is, unless it's a very simple version of the exercise and we just need them to work on getting stronger and we just need them to like develop some endurance or whatever, then I might even need to regress the exercise as a way to actually have them training in a more effective way. So if despite my best efforts at coaching, they just can't do a good opposite arm and leg dead bug, well, then just having them do the hand lift and really focus on keeping that neutral spine, that's a way better decision. And so in that case, how I modify or regress is the exercise selection, right? I think you'll find your own kind of cadence as you go. I find that my natural choice as a trainer is to start with those basic exercises and coach the hell out of them. Like, again, those of you that were in Nanaimo, we took really simple stuff and I made you work pretty hard. So the reason why I like that is if I'm already picking the most basic version of the exercise, it's like I'm already regressing. But now what I'm going to teach you how to do is make the basics feel harder. And so then it's a function of my coaching, right? I don't really want to, I don't consider myself a good coach because I can find a way to have a beginner do a barbell clean. That's not really a thing. Barbell cleans are tough. They're complicated. They're compound. They involve a lot of things. So I'm not going to stake my claim on, I can take a beginner and get them into a barbell clean. That's just not the right thing to do. But if I can give a beginner a really good ass blasting hip bridge, and they're like, oh my God, I've never felt my glutes like that before, great, we can build on that. And that'll eventually turn into a clean, right? So there's not a lot of slides on manipulating workouts. So this is another opportunity for us to spend some time in the exercise library a little bit. So we'll carry on here through a couple more, but ultimately what we're going to be looking at is this concept of reverse engineering. So again, if we're working with a human being, if we're coaching to the human being, if they're stressed or tired, we can see the need to back it down a little bit. If they're well rested, rejuvenated, if they come in, we say, how are you doing? They're like, I feel great. Cool, then let's push their workout a little bit. So that's one, is like the client self-report. You can gather that information really easily by just asking them how they feel. But like, ask them and genuinely listen to the answer. Don't just be like, how are you? Fine. Okay, let's go. How are you? Fine. No, really, how are you? Like, how do you feel? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much energy do you have today? How was your day at work? How much sleep did you get last night? Like, we might have to dig a little bit to get people to give us the honest answer we need, but that self-report's really important. The one thing that I would say about that, though, is especially for clients who come in later in the day, they might be like, ugh, oh my God, I had such a rough day. And that's fine. But often by the end of the warm-up, they feel different, right? Those of us that have done a 6-phase dynamic warm-up together in live class, you know, give me 8 to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to ask you again, well, how do you feel? Because often by that point, feel a lot better, right? So the self-report is not everything. It's a place to start, but I also want to observe how they're moving. So are they moving pretty well, or do they seem really stiff or sore? Are they keeping a nice neutral spine, or are they rounding or hunching, right? So if they're struggling in the warm-up, well, then that tells me I'm going to have to dial back the workout. Versus they might have had a bad day, but when I get them moving, they actually look great and they're making it look easy. Okay, well, then I'm going to listen to their body more than their mouth, right? I'm going to say, okay, your body's moving great. Let's work. So this is kind of why I say, like, we're never going to be replaced by an app. We're never going to be replaced by a free website that gives out programs, because the app, the program can't adapt, right? I felt really tired the other day, so I did a longer warm up and then 3 sets of everything instead of 4. And by the time I was done, I felt pretty good. But if you just looked at that on paper, it would be like, well, Logan, you only completed 75% of your workout today, you loser, right? So like, we have to be able to make that read. And it's going to be both verbal and also like visual assessment that'll give us the confidence to make those changes, right? So examples of exercise progressions, like ultimately what I want is that my client moves well. Sometimes that means I'm making it harder for them because they're demonstrating that they're moving well. Sometimes that means I make it easier because they're demonstrating that they're having a hard time moving well. But in general, if we were to take any movement, if I were to say what makes it easier, what makes it harder, well, if I train them in static positions like isometric holds, then that's going to be easier for them to do well. And then I'll add dynamic movement. So the example here is like, I need them to be pretty good at a plank before I ask them to do a push-up, right? Same thing with simple before complex. I'm going to take more complex movements and I'm going to break them down into pieces. So I might teach someone a squat first, and then I might have them do like a seated shoulder press next. And then I might have them do a standing overhead press. And then by the time they've got both of those down, then I'm going to have them do a squat to an overhead press, right? So now there's more complexity because there's 2 movements happening in one. Similarly, slow before fast. I want my clients to move slowly with really good movement quality before they go fast. And kind of I'm sure we can all relate, but sometimes people go fast to get it over with because it's hard. So speed hides a lack of control, or speed hides kind of like a lack of technique. So, you son of a bitch, get out of here. I just got, there we go. Okay, good. So speed can hide a lack of control. Speed can hide sort of lack of balance. So I really want someone to perform a new movement slowly. I really want them to feel what doing it right feels like. So again, isometrics are like the slowest possible, right? And then stable before unstable. So I want to do a push-up on the ground before I have them do a push-up on a suspension trainer or a stability ball, because the instability is harder to manage. Small range of motion before large, makes sense. And then also uniplanar before multiplanar. So like if we take lunges, for example, I probably want them to be pretty good in the sagittal plane first. And then I'm going to have them try the frontal plane. And then I might have them do like a pendulum where they go back to side, to back to side, to back to side. So uniplanar exercises are going to be easier than when we have to transfer between different planes. But I do want to work them towards multiplanar movement because that's really, really great for athletes. That sort of matches what they have to do out on the field or the court or the ice, right? Low or no load before higher load, obviously. And then this last one to me is pretty much everything. I was talking to Josh about this. I'm like, that's basically my entire philosophy. You need proximal stability before you try to engage distal mobility. So what that means is the center has to be strong before we expect to be able to go manage the outer limits, right? So again, I have to be able to do a really good quadruped before I can do a bird dog. Because by the time I extend my arms and legs out, it gets harder to control the center. So if I'm not already good at controlling the center, then my bird dog is going to look pretty awful and wobbly, right? So this whole page to me, if you really understand this stuff and you have a client that's having a hard time with a movement, then you just change one of these things. So if they're doing walking lunges and they're having a really hard time with it, maybe you're asking them to move too fast, or maybe you've asked for a dynamic movement when what they need to be working on is a static movement. If you're trying to get them to do, kettlebell RDL, like a single leg RDL, and their balance is really wobbly. 1 foot is unstable, 2 feet is stable. So maybe we need to give them a 2-foot RDL first before we have them try a single leg, right? So this whole page, what I like about it, and I posted something earlier today, I keep talking about developmental positions and I keep talking about ways of using the 3DC, right? So that we're getting more functional with what we're doing. I think one of the most important reasons for that is because if the only way we have of making something harder is to go heavier, or if the only way we have of making something easier is to go lighter, that's kind of boring. And it also means that if the only thing I'm ever doing over time is making things heavier, well, then the clients are kind of like, oh, okay, well, if all we're ever going to do is go heavier, then I guess I could do that on my own. I don't need you anymore, right? So when I'm talking about exercise manipulation, I really like talking about functionality and 3DC and variety, because the client can't figure that stuff out on their own. So I'm offering way more value if that's the way I change their workouts sometimes. I'm not saying I don't ever go heavier, but if I do more things than just go heavier, then I'm demonstrating more value. And I think that's what we want, right? So the couple of pages of slides are now back to the acute variables. So I can do less sets, I can do less reps, I can add more time, right? That's easy. What I find is if we give the version of the exercise that they can do well, and we coach for technical failure, which I'll describe in a second, the trend over time is that they would get stronger, right? Not necessarily every single day, but over time, the trend is they will get stronger. And my sort of general rule of thumb is train to get stronger and eat to get leaner. And if you focus on those two things, you'll be pretty happy with the results for most people. right? I'm not trying, that's not a generalization. There's people that don't need to be any leaner. But like if you lift to get stronger and you eat to get healthier, call it healthier instead of leaner if you want. I think those two things stand us pretty well. Okay. So if you've had a chance to go through the notes on this section, and if you have any questions, we'll pause here in case you want to ask anything. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to head into looking at a bunch of exercise progression stuff. So kind of similar to what we did with the core training exercises the other day. So before I do that, I'll just pause. Does anybody have any questions that they want to cover before I go rogue and all Logan it?
Can I ask a quick question about the tempo that in the slide?
Yeah.
I forgot how to read that. Like it said 4-2-2 before 1-1-1. So how to read that tempo?
Yep. So the first number is the eccentric. The second number is the pause. The third number is the concentric. The fourth number is the pause.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Sorry for all the back and forth, but I'm going to switch over to the other computer so that I can actually see your faces and use a Word document at the same time. So I'm going to close this one. I'm going to open the other one. I'll be gone for 1 minute, and then we will carry on and I can actually make pseudo eye contact. So don't go away.